Hi guys, and welcome to the vlog where I'll finally be giving you a full spoiler breakdown on the book Save Me, which is the third in the Maxton Hall trilogy, and also kind of like an everything to expect from the third season of Maxton Hall, like a guide. So let's just jump right in because I know this is gonna be, or this has been a long awaited vlog, and it's finally time that I'm doing it. So let's log in. So now for context, ever since I finished Alchemized yesterday, because I didn't want to crash out and fall into a huge reading slump, I started my reread of the third book so I could come give you one of these breakdown videos, because I do believe the end of season 2 just like premiered a few days ago. The finale is done. Everyone's now waiting to expect and see what is to come from season 3, because I know that it ends off on a cliffhanger. Because I've read the second book, I don't really know what happens in the show because I haven't had the time to lock in and watch season 2. I will get to it in a few days though, so there might be like a few inconsistencies in this video with what comes and what's already happened in the show and then what I'm going to be explaining to you right now. But I don't think it'll be a lot, because in my opinion the show has been adapted almost to a T from the book. It's nearly perfect, and so let's just jump right in. I have started my reread and I'm almost 75% of the way done. It's just at the moment my notes cover only 55%, which is why we'll discuss all of that till chapter 17 in the book, and then I'll go back, make more notes on the rest of the book, come back in, and we're finishing this tonight because I want you guys to finally have this video. I know everyone's been waiting on the edge of their seats or whatever to figure out what happens next, because I do believe it ends on a cliffhanger, and so I've got you. Here we are coming in strong, and now to start off with the updates for the third book. I will be discussing only the scenes I think are important story-wise, so like filler scenes or like scenes wherein you're just having to watch the dynamic of the characters. I won't be discussing that. I won't be discussing full conversations either. This is just like a brief overview of everything that happens, but it won't be so brief because I talk a lot anyway and I'll end up explaining it all. It's just the key events that I think are important for plot, because I am rereading this book at this point, will be what I speak about. So don't expect a lot, but at the same time this is going to be, I think, a concrete enough summary anyway, considering the last 2 videos I made on the subject are an hour long each. If you do want background on this video though, definitely go ahead and check those videos out first before you start this one, because there are things referenced in the books that I'm not sure if it's happened in the show yet because I haven't caught up on it, but it's just something you would like for background knowledge if you want to be further invested into this video. If you don't want to, that's totally fine. Let's just hop right into this book and its updates for what I've written down. We start off with Graham Sutton, the professor. He's walking out of the school with his things in his hands because he's also been asked to leave. In fact, Lexington told him that he's not allowed to be any other student, and as he's walking by, he actually spots James and Cyril kind of standing off to the side beside the wall watching him, and he kind of loses his temper because he's just lost his job, his only source of livelihood. He's probably also lost his reputation because he was involved with a student, and that's going to be coming out across the country at some point, whenever. And since it was like a high profile student, Lydia, that no one really knows about yet, they all think it's Ruby, but regardless it's still going to come across, and so he's kind of pissed off that now his life is in shambles, and so he kind of loses it. He walks up to James and Cyril and he has this thing wherein he starts yelling at them. The only one to actually show a concrete reaction is Cyril, and he's kind of pissed. So this makes you wonder in the first place if James is the one who sent the photos with Ruby and Graham into Lexington in the first place, because he is the one who took them. We figured that out in book 1. But then is he the one who actually sent them in? Because he doesn't look like anything at this point. No reaction, just like a blank mask of a face. It's Cyril who's pissed off about the fact that Sutton was with Lydia, considering we know Cyril's past history with Lydia, and so this makes you wonder a bunch of different things. Now we switch perspective to Ruby. This entire book has switching perspectives with everyone in the friend group, so I feel like it definitely gives you kind of like a perspective into what everyone's thinking and what everyone's going through, and there's like a bunch of plot lines coming in together, but at the same time when I'm explaining, I'm trying not to get like the plot lines confused for y'all, so I'm just gonna have to specify each time. But now we're in Ruby's perspective. She's kind of wandering around in her neighborhood looking for her sister Ember. She ends up going to the school, but as it turns out, one of Ember's friends says that Ember hasn't actually shown up, she's sick or whatever, and as she's walking by, a car kind of moves behind her and stops there and asks her to get in, and it's actually Ren. So Ren is part of James's friend group. We all know that Ren and Ruby have a complicated past history and whatever, and Ren is currently kind of befriending Ember, kind of falling for her. And so again, this makes you wonder and question a lot of things, but considering the fact that he's part of the friend group and he knows that Ruby was expelled because of those photos, this is more like a good move on his part, trying to comfort her. And so she gets in, they have a conversation. He ends up explaining how James would never hurt her in that way, she just needs to keep a little bit of trust. And so he offers to kind of drive her to James so they can have a whole discussion about what happened, because it's the same afternoon as the day Ruby got expelled and she's still just walking around in shock, trying to figure out what went down, trying to figure out what happened. And so this is the only way to figure out answers. In the midst of everything though, Ruby ends up questioning why he was in her neighborhood in the first place and why he's moving around in a cheaper car than she'd expect from him. And this is where you start to get a little background on Ren too, considering the fact that we know he's getting involved with Ember, even though it's still like friendship and they still like each other in that stage or whatever, but we all know that he's in there for Ember, not Ruby. And the car is because his family lost his fortune recently, but only a few people know about it, and so secrets are coming to light. But regardless, we do also see Ren trying to make like amends with Ruby in this scene because of the whole thing that he wants to be with Ember and stuff, and he wants to get in her books again, considering what he did a couple years ago, spiking her drink and stuff. And so you can definitely see character development and change happening here. But then they finally decide that okay, they're just gonna head to James now to actually get answers, and so that's what they end up doing. Now we switch over to Lydia's perspective. She's actually on call with Graham because she also finds out that Graham's been kicked out of the school for good, and so she's trying to console him, kind of figure things out with him. And guess who walks in while she's speaking to him? Her dad. So he overhears, he kind of ends up cutting the phone, taking it away and letting her know that, listen, hey, I did everything to save your reputation, so you cannot talk to this man and be in communication with him again. And this is where she gets on to what she ended up saying, because what do you mean saving her reputation? And that's where it's kind of revealed that Mortimer was the one behind sending the photos off to Lexington, which is why the envelope that was discovered or whatever, I think in the past book summary or whatever I spoke about it, that Ruby sees an envelope with like the B symbol on it, that was all Mortimer's doing. He was the one who sent the photos, and now things start to come to light wherein he kind of knocked out two birds with one stone, removed Sutton from Lydia's life and removed Ruby from James's by sending those compromising photos of both of them in. And so he's kind of like a mastermind, but this is where Lydia gets mad because she lets him know that regardless of what he does, he cannot truly remove Graham from her life, considering the fact that she's now pregnant. Now he never knew that. That comes as a shock to him, so he loses his own shit and he ends up kind of stuffing her stuff into this like suitcase, taking it out, packing her bags, and then he lets her know that, listen, hey, I'm kicking you out. Now you've got to go live with your Aunt Ophelia, which, for background context, she is her mother's sister, because he's kind of done with everything trying to save the company and stuff. He's already losing his mind, and so this is truly where he snaps. Now in the midst of everything else, James kind of walks in. He tries to come to Lydia's defense like any brother would, but as it turns out, Mortimer is too far gone beyond, and so he actually goes to come beat James up. But before he can do that, Lydia kind of notices, she steps in the middle. She ends up getting slapped by this man. She faints. A father slapped his pregnant daughter. She faints and blacks out, and by the time she's conscious, James is kind of helping her up and they've got to move. And this is the worst part, because like, take her to a hospital, figure out if she's okay, figure out if the kids are okay. The fact that they're just packing her and carting her away, I don't know, it just feels so sad to me, considering the environment we get to see these two kids raised in. And that's hell. I feel so bad for them, considering the fact that they're rich, they're supposed to have everything in the world, but they still have the sort of family wherein the love is not there, there is no care, it's just all about the money and the reputation. And that's really sad to look at, because that kind of environment is not healthy to raise a child. And here we have two kids trying to kind of live through it all, thrive, whereas it's hard to even survive, and they're still going through it all. So that's definitely shown in a very good depiction. Anyway, so Lydia kind of takes her stuff, she's going out, she's leaving with Percy, their driver, but as she's about to step in the car to leave, Ruby and Ren kind of pull up in Ren's car because they were supposed to come to the Beauforts, and this is where they find out that Lydia is actually being kicked out, and Lydia also reveals to Ren now, because he wasn't aware, that she's pregnant. So now she ends up leaving. James lets them know that stay like waiting or whatever, he'll be back to explain everything in a little bit. He's just going to make sure she gets to Ophelia's safe and sound. And so they head out. These two decide, so Ren and Ruby kind of decide that they're now gonna head to Alistair's house, kind of congregate the whole friend group to kind of figure out what's actually going down. And this is great, because I feel like this definitely shows that the whole friend group actually stays together through all of the thick and thin, and they're there for each other regardless of everything. And now in the hard times, they're still there, kind of as like a support system in the background, waiting to catch whatever happens and protect them. So it's kind of like a solidated front, and that's really sweet. Now we end up switching to Alistair's point of view, and here we're actually watching him trying to cope with the absence of James and Kesh in his life, because James, he isn't really being regular to like the lacrosse games anymore, so that's a routine that's getting upended. And then Kesh, they were kind of involved secretly for the last couple books or something like that, but now at this point Alistair refuses to be with someone who treats him like a dirty little secret, and so he kind of misses Kesh because he wants to revert back to being best friends, but at the same time he feels more, and so it's just like a bunch of conflicting scenarios. He doesn't know what to do about it. And in the midst of everything, the news comes that Lydia's been kicked out. There's a bunch of other things happening. So again, he's getting ready to go to his place, meet all of his friends, then actually figure out what's going down. So lots going on in these teenagers' lives. It's kind of crazy, but here we are. But in this scene, we also end up getting answers. So once they get to Alistair's house, everybody, it actually turns out that sure, Mortimer was the one who sent in the photos to Lexington, so Lydia and James's dad sent them over, but how did he get the photos in the first place? Because it was James who had them. So as it turns out, in the previous book, when James actually went to console Cyril after Cyril saw Sutton and Lydia, Cyril actually stole James's phone, took those photos, sent it to himself, and then sent those photos from himself to the dad, kind of letting him know so that the dad could take care of the dirty work of getting rid of the two of them. And the photos then were sent over to Lexington so the job could be done. But Cyril's stake in all of this was, number one, he's still in love with Lydia. He cannot see her and stand it with another man. And number two, he kind of wants his life to go back to the routine before these siblings were in love, because that felt normal to him despite how all of them were suffering. And so it kind of gives you like a glimpse into the kind of childhood that they raised in, that all this partying and constant like almost toxic behavior, you can call it, from the way they all behave and they are on drugs and drinking all the time, that is his version of normal. And once their twins finally start to settle down with their love lives or whatever, that is upending that normal, because he still wants to go back to the chaos because he finds routine in it. And so that was his stake behind it all, and you can kind of see where he's coming from, but what he did was still messed up, because now in the middle, Sutton's job is gone, Ruby's life is upended, she's not sure if she can go to Oxford anymore, and we know that's her number one dream since day one. And so that was really horrible and mean, considering he was only thinking of himself at this point, but that's also something that's discussed. And that's how you get background actually on how the photos came to go to Lexington in the first place. Anyway, now we switch over back to Ruby's home life perspective or whatever. She ends up having a proper conversation now with her parents. It's the next day actually, because it's been like a day since she was expelled, and they also need to stay in the loop of what's going on. And while her mom didn't originally listen to her, it's because she was in a whole state of panic or whatever. Now they sit down to kind of dissect everything that went down, and her parents listen to the full story and actually believe her this time around, because they know that Mortimer would stop at nothing to get like revenge and his family's legacy fulfilled or whatever. And so that is also happening. After this, we get a scene where James comes over, he gives Ruby her notes or whatever so she can keep up with what's going on in Maxton Hall. He and Lynn, her best friend, kind of end up color coding the entire thing, because that's the way Ruby does her notes. So I thought that was sweet and romantic, and while it doesn't like further plot, I just wanted to mention it because that's so cute. But then also moving on from that, what does further plot is the fact that after this scene, James actually goes to meet Cyril at this bar where Cyril's at, because Cyril is finally like feeling heavy with the weight of his decisions. And James just goes in, no revenge, nothing, just letting him know that what he did and what consequences everyone's going to deal with. Because now that they know Cyril was behind it all, he actually lets Cyril know that Lydia actually got kicked out from the house. And that wasn't Cyril's intention, obviously, but he lets Cyril know that what he did wasn't good, because now Lydia's living with Ophelia in the middle of nowhere. Two people's lives have been upended, and this man's just sitting there in a bar drinking his sorrows away. And so Cyril starts to panic finally. The guilt starts setting in, but before he can do anything, James is done. Sick of looking at his face, he just walks out. Anyway, beyond this, we get a different scene again of James. And actually, as it turns out, there's Graham in the scene. He kind of is called to meet the dad, so Lydia's father, at Beaufort. And so you actually watch Graham kind of go there to have this conversation with Lydia's dad, be civil about everything. At this point, keep in mind, Graham does not know about the kids, and so he's called there to speak to the dad. But the dad, the first thing he does is offer Graham money to stay away from Lydia's life, because he knows Lydia would not stay away from Graham, and he's kind of trying to use Graham's not knowing about the kids to his advantage by paying him off. But Graham turns him down, and beyond all of this, behind all of it, James is standing on the other end of the door listening in, because he also came to the office for some work. But once he listens to this and sees how wild his father can truly be, kicking his sister out and then trying to do this and ruin her life even further. He's had enough. This is the moment where he finally snaps, and you kind of get like this almost echo of everything he's been thinking of for the past couple books and everything he's gone through in his life and everything Ruby's told him to do, like stand up to his father and stuff. And this is the moment where he finally decides that he's enough. So he kind of goes to the father and lets him know that, listen, hey, he's going to be selling all his shares at Beaufort. He doesn't want to stay associated anymore. And while he did try to be the perfect son to his mom and dad, the mom is dead at this point. The dad is ripping his life to shreds. He's had enough. So James decides that this is the moment where he's finally going to walk out. And so he lets the dad know. The dad lets him know that, listen, if you're selling your shares, you're not welcome in the house anymore. So he's kicked out of the house. And this is also crucial to, I guess, what's going on in the storyline, in the dramatics at least, because there is stuff that's going to come back to haunt them all later towards the end. But I'll get to that when I summarize in the second part. For now, this is what ends up happening. After this, we get a bunch of more filler scenes in to kind of process what's going down between all this, the showdown or whatever. But before anything else, we start getting scenes between Ren and Ember. They're starting to finally like look at each other in the romantic light, even though they aren't pursuing anything yet. And so it's kind of just to show you their connection. They're doing like home renovation work together in Ren's new place because he had to move out since his family lost all their money. And then in the midst of everything, you know, they're hanging, they're having a good time. You have another scene where Ruby's catching up with all her Maxton Hall work in the library. She gets back home. She sees James with her father. They're working in the kitchen. She's wondering what's actually happening. And James kind of lets her know that he's been kicked out, and so she offers to let him come stay with them, and James kind of moves in with the Bells, and so that's also something that ends up happening. We have a scene of Lydia and kind of like a home life with Ophelia, because we've known since the beginning that she was kicked out and she was sent to live with her aunt. We just don't know anything about her aunt yet, considering that she is her mom's sister. We know that she's her mom's little sister, but the kind of character we saw of the mom in the last couple books at least, it wasn't like the best at most times, and so you kind of wonder if Lydia is being sent to another version of hell. Except when you actually get these scenes, it's kind of sweet to see Lydia kind of watching to see how a healthy environment for herself should work, because all this time she was raised under her parents, she was raised under Mortimer's roof, and she kind of had to watch this like toxic environment unfold, and that was supposed to be her version of normal. But now she truly gets to experience normal with Ophelia, because Ophelia is like the best aunt ever. She's like a free spirit. She loves listening to the Jonas Brothers. She ends up drawing together with Lydia, kind of letting Lydia know that, I know your father said you couldn't, but you should pursue your fashion dreams. Your life is like not over and stuff. And you know, you should do what you want. And then they're like speaking together. They're talking about experiences with the mom, because Lydia lost her mom recently. And they're kind of talking through their grief together, having these like bonding moments. And this is where you can truly see like a healthy relationship forming, because this is the way it's supposed to be. And the fact that she's only getting to experience it now after 18 years of life is really sad, but then that's also something we get to watch unfold. The only reason I'm currently mentioning this scene though right now is because I feel like it deserves more significance, because here there's also stuff about the mom's will that's been discussed that will come back to haunt you. And basically Lydia and Ophelia are talking, and as they're going about it, Ophelia kind of strays away from the current conversation, and she kind of lets Lydia know that, yeah, the whole family business thing, Ophelia was also part of it, because it was on the mom's side. So Beaufort's is actually the mom's business. It was her mom's dad's business or something like that. And as per their family tradition, it's only supposed to be passed down to the closest living relatives. So their dad actually gave it down to Lydia's mom, not Ophelia, because Ophelia was the younger daughter. And so after the mom's death, the mom technically, if she were to follow family tradition, since it like opened or whatever, she would have to have passed it to Ophelia or her kids Lydia and James, not Mortimer. But now Ophelia starts, you know, assuming that maybe it's because she was like close with Mortimer and whatnot, and she was just kicked out of the business midway because they didn't agree with her decisions, and Mortimer was like taking all over. And so this is why you're starting to kind of question the legitimacy of what actually went down between all of this, because otherwise, if the mother, she went as per the way tradition dictated, it was not supposed to go to Mortimer in the first place. So now you're wondering why he has control of the assets in the first place, because being a business partner for however many years is not as significant as your family having a whole ass legacy to maintain, considering the fact that everyone's just been giving her off to their closest living relatives. And we did have a couple vulnerable scenes with the mom in the past couple books with the kids and stuff, so you're wondering if this was actually her decision to begin with, and there's like a lot of questioning coming in there as well in terms of the will and what actually happened with the Beaufort estate and stuff. And so this is also something to consider because it barely briefly happens in the scene, but this is where it's starting to hint at what's to come later in the book, and I thought that was important. But as all of this is happening, Lydia actually gets a visitor, and it's Graham, to come speak about what's actually going down. He still doesn't know. Keep that in mind, and the chapter ends over there. We have a scene now wherein Kesh and Alistair actually at this like pub or whatever after one of their games, hanging out, and they have this discussion almost on their relationship and like what's going down with it, because they aren't really together anymore, but they're not comfortable enough being friends. And you know, Kesh wants more, but Alistair doesn't want to be a secret, and that's also something that happens. And that'll be so for real. I love them so much. I'm just waiting for the scenes where they get their happy ending, because I'm sorry, Alistair's like a ball of sunshine in the books. Please give him that happy ending, he deserves it. But even though I know it's coming, I'm counting down the pages till it happens, and here we are regardless. Now onwards, we also start getting a bunch of like filler scenes in. One wherein Lydia tells Graham about the kids. He's happy. One wherein you follow Ruby and James kind of just discussing life and love or whatever. There's a scene wherein James kind of lets Ruby know that his favorite color is green, and she asks which green, and he cannot tell her that it's the color of her eyes. I thought that was cute, but then he just lets her know that it's just green or whatever. And so the fact that he never had a favorite color and now is the color of her eyes, the exact color, that's so sweet. But anyway, beyond the scene, they're kind of driving off in James's car or whatever to go meet Lydia again at Ophelia's, and as they're doing all of this, they end up walking in. They see Graham, they kind of sort things out, they kind of meet Lydia, speak to her. Ruby gets to be introduced to Ophelia, and it's like a big family reunion, even though it's a little awkward considering like Graham is still their teacher or whatever, and even though he's not in the job anymore, he's still got that teacher position in their minds, and so that's something that also happens. As they're having their reunion moment though, Lydia actually comes to let Ruby know that everything that's going down in Ruby's life is obviously not Ruby's fault, but Lydia's starting to feel guilty over it, and she lets her know that she's gonna do everything in her power to fix it, meaning she's actually gonna go to Lexington and let him know that the pictures, even though it stars Ruby and Graham, it was actually Lydia who's having the relationship, and Ruby's covering for Lydia at the moment. And so she's gonna go tell the truth to Lexington because Ruby cannot afford to have her future thrown away, and Lydia can clearly see the point in that, and so she's gonna go fix everything for her. The only thing is they need proof. You remember that one time when James, he went to speak to Cyril at the bar or whatever? Now that comes back into play because at this point Cyril is feeling guilty, and so he actually goes ahead and sends James the original photos of Ruby and Sutton or whatever that actually show that they aren't like kissing or anything. It's just that they're standing a little close and the light is dim, and you're taking your own conclusions from the photos. And now James sends those photos to Lydia. Lydia takes them over. She lets Sutton know that it was her all along, and suddenly Ruby's free to go to Maxton Hall again. How would she know where to find Lexington? The funniest part is Lexington actually hangs out with the dad at this country club, and so when Lydia is going over to reveal everything, it happens also in front of all her father's like associates and stuff, because they all see that she's very much pregnant, and so that's something that also comes to light the secret at this point. Now at this point you start to get a few more filler scenes. Ruby's back at Maxton Hall, Ruby and James's relationship, James and his friends' relationship dynamic, Ren and Ember, and there's all of that stuff going down happening in the background, but I don't think it's really important towards like the main storyline, which is why I'm just glossing over. It will be taking place in this season though, I think season 3 once it comes out, so that'll be something that's happening, and you can I guess look forward to those, not spoiled, because there's not a lot to say. It's just that I feel like the filler scenes are happening in the middle, so we're gonna move on past those. At this point, keep in mind James has walked out from Beaufort. He's threatened to sell all of his shares and stuff, and so Mortimer is doing everything to get him back. He's emailing him, letting him know that he'll give like another chance and stuff, and James is not taking it, but Mortimer's had enough, so he actually lets James know via email one day at night in this threat that now you've ignored all my messages, you've heeded no warning, so I guess stay ready for what's gonna happen to you. And again, you're hooked back into the plot. The author does a great balance between like enough scenes to give you time to absorb what's actually going down, and then more scenes wherein there's like showdown happening and you're like on the edge of your seat trying to figure out what happens next, because I feel like every time there's like almost like a lull about to start happening, there's something crazy thrown in plot wise, and suddenly you're trying to figure out what might go down again. And then you're also with your favorite characters, so you're having the best time ever. And so the author's writing style should be studied because it's so fun. But anyway, now you start getting more filler. There's James and Ember. They're starting to kind of blog together because James, he's always wanted to blog, and so Ember, she's got that fashion blog or whatever. She's kind of teaching James the basics of it so he can start his own travel blog at some point, because that's his like one true calling and passion in life, and he finally gets to pursue it now that he has no other like obligations from Beaufort hanging over his head. On the other hand, we have Lydia. She calls in, they're kind of speaking about her life at Ophelia's. She's happy, she's, being tutored by someone so she doesn't miss out on her studies and stuff. Her aunt wants to throw her a baby shower. She's buying all kinds of baby clothes she sees online. She's knitting and crocheting stuff for the kids, and so that's sweet. You kind of get to see her finally get almost happy sort of, not final ending, but like a happy kind of life that she's always deserved all along, and that's something that's happening. And then there's this other scene wherein Ren, he's finally ready to like open up to his friends about the fact that his parents kind of lost their fortune and now they're in like a much smaller and not as pricey house as the one they had before, like their mansion and stuff. So he actually invites all the gang over, including James and Ruby, to like a housewarming. They're getting ready to go, except Ruby accidentally lets it slip, and because Ember is starting to be friends with Ren right now and Ember wasn't invited, Ember's kind of pissed. And this is where I left off. Now I think we've finished up to chapter 16 worth of summary. I'm on chapter 17 now, worth to give you more. So I'm gonna cut this update short. I'm gonna go back to the book and continue seeing where it goes, and then writing my notes down and coming back to you with more updates. Because listen, I think we're on a roll right now and we're doing it tonight, but that's what's happening. I'm gonna go get back to it and I'll update you guys in not so long, because I'm nearly done with my reread anyway, and I'll go finish it out, kind of see where it goes next, update you on it in only like a few minutes now, seconds for you on screen. But regardless, stay tuned, because this is going to be the fun part of the book now, where the actual showdown starts to happen. And so I feel like all the dominoes are stacked up in line for it to happen, and so here we are. I'm gonna go get back to reading, kind of finish it out, and then I'll update you all in a little bit once I'm done with my progress and everything I've read since and explaining it all to you, because this is gonna be the last time we're doing it, but we're locking in and we're gonna do it now. So see you guys in a bit. Bye. Okay, so it's much later. I have gone ahead, finished the rest of my reread out, finished making all my notes, had a whole ass drink of water because of how long I was talking the last time around, but I'm done now. I'm back in, and now it's time to update you from where we left off, so chapter 17 to the very end of the book, because I summarized the whole thing. And now we're in the home run, the final stretch, because I've been making Maxton Hall related videos since like January at this point, and so full circle, very end of the year, last video that'll be coming out for this mini series, I guess. And so let's do it. It's finally time. Continue where we left off. Ember is really pissed about the fact that Ren invited everyone except her to that housewarming, even though she was an integral part of actually forming that house and, fixing it up and renovating it and making it the home that now he's showing off to his friends without her. And she's heartbroken because she thought they were like friends and stuff, and apparently not. Apparently it feels like he was just using her all along. So she decides she's gonna start ignoring Ren. On the other hand, we actually follow a bunch of housewarming dynamics at the actual party itself that's going on, and we get to watch all of them kind of hanging out together. But as all of that's happening, they actually find out that there's another party going on at the same time, and it's at the lacrosse rival James McCormack's house. And the weirdest part is, when they look up like online photos and stuff, Cyril is in the background. So as it turns out, Cyril did not come attend his best friend Ren's own housewarming. He's gone to the rivals party and stuff, and so they decide that okay, they're gonna go over there and retrieve him because he looks like really drunk and out of it in the photos. Once they get him, they all start making amends amongst themselves or whatever, and you finally get Cyril's perspective on things. You're watching Alistair as all of this is happening through his eyes, but Cyril actually explains how he feels like his life is spinning out of control and everything he perceived as normal is changing, and so he's feeling out of it. He's not really able to adjust with the new sense, and that's why he did everything he did. And in the midst of everything, the friends start to forgive him. They all start to reunite amongst themselves, and finally they are starting to like heal the cracks in their friendship and bring him back to the friend group. And now he finally agrees that he's going to start going to Maxton Hall again after all his like continued absence and silence, because he was feeling the guilt, and now he's finally able to almost like assuage it, considering that everyone's like accepting him with open arms back into the group again, because they always have each other's backs. But from here on out, you actually see his character start to change for the better, and you kind of start to watch him improve himself. On the other hand, now as all of this is happening, you also get a glimpse into Alistair and Kesh again, and at this point they're in the car by themselves after they've dropped everyone off after the party or whatever. They left Cyril, and as it turns out, Kesh lets Alistair know that he came out to his parents. He told them that he's bi and stuff, and suddenly they're confessing each other's feelings, they're talking everything through, and maybe it's going to work out again, because he's not going to keep Alistair's secret anymore. His parents are accepting of everything and he's ready for it. So basically now they're together again for the better, I hope. And listen, I love them. I'm so happy that they're happy the scene finally came. And now moving on from that, we have Ren actually going to Ember's school, because keep in mind, Ember does not go to Maxton Hall. She goes to a different like high school in Comsey, and so he actually goes there because now he's also part of the neighborhood or whatever. Except he goes to kind of apologize and speak things out through with Ember, because she's like ignoring him now and it's starting to hurt. Except she herself is in pain, so she decides she's just going to ignore him and walk away. We also get to watch Lydia and Cyril talk things through, because keep in mind, before everything else, they were best friends. Then Cyril started falling in love with her. She went off with Graham, everything that went down. And so they're trying to kind of resolve the things that actually went down between the two of them, because they used to be best friends and they don't even speak anymore. And so as all of this is happening, they're kind of hashing things out. First they're arguing, but then beyond that they're starting to accept what actually went down and try to fix things. And she finally lets him know that, hey, I'm not sure if you'll be okay with it, but she's having children. And he has the cutest reaction ever when he's asking if he's gonna be a cool uncle. And so things also start to kind of go in the track of being resolved between the two of them, and that's also really fun to watch because they were best friends. Bring back that dynamic and make it really sweet the way it used to be. Now after this, we also end up watching James and Ruby in their almost connecting stages. I feel like all these scenes coming in right now are supposed to be almost filler before the main like showdown happens towards the very end, because after that is the end of the book and the trilogy. So we get to watch all the couples kind of sort it out amongst themselves. But here specifically, we get to watch James kind of take Ruby on this like long getaway weekend away, and her parents have agreed and they know everything that's going down, but it comes as a surprise to her. So she's just like, okay, let's go along with it. And as it turns out, James actually takes her apartment hunting because he's looking for a place close to Oxford so that they can spend the rest of their years together, whatever, as she's studying there, as he's like looking for a place in the middle of all his like travel adventures and stuff. And so they do that. He shows her his blog or whatever, the one Ember helped him develop, and how he's starting work on it. In the first book, they made this like goals plan kind of paper wherein everything he would like to do if he wasn't like forced down by Beaufort, and all his actual ambitions in life were written down on the sheet of paper. And so he takes it out from his wallet after all this time, shows that listen, he's on his like part to achieving all of these dreams at this point. And so they start discussing plans of the future, and this is where you can truly see them, I guess, cement as like an everlasting forever couple, because they're talking through all these things. They're gonna make it, and it's gonna be so worth it. They're not gonna be one of those couples that break up after the book, because that's just the way I think sometimes, but they won't be. They're like everlasting in my head, and that scene just proved it. So that was also something that happened. Anyway, now moving on to some more Maxton Hall scenes, because this whole series is about Maxton Hall. You get to watch Lynn and Ruby and their dynamic as friends. They're just hanging out, crafting and planning for Lydia's baby shower, because it's actually happening. But in the midst of everything, Cyril kind of walks up and he actually asks to speak to Lynn. So Ruby leaves them to be. When she comes back, Lynn lets her know that Cyril actually came to apologize. So now he's turning his life around. He's trying to be a half decent human and kind of take back for all his mistakes, because at some point while Cyril was in love with Lydia, Lynn was in love with Cyril, and they used to be best friends before her father lost all his like fortune and stuff. And so you get to watch that storyline or whatever, when he's trying to clear the air before the baby shower because everyone's been invited. And so he's fixing things again with her, and you start to see him again start to rise as a character, because throughout the series he's been such a douchebag, but now he's finally starting to be better, and you get to see that, and the development is fun. Anyway, so beyond this, you also get to watch them, like I said, crafting and getting ready for the baby shower. This is where you truly start to see Lydia kind of accepting the fact that she's having kids, celebrating her children, celebrating her twins, not treating them like the burden that her father treated them to be, because that's just sad and that's just not the way it's supposed to be. And truly, this is also where you start to see again more examples of a healthy relationship between a parental figure, Ophelia, the aunt, and a child, Lydia, and then the way it should actually be done, not the way her father and the way he parented or whatever, because that's just wrong. Sorry. Anyway, now at the baby shower, a bunch of happy kind of situations and things end up happening. Percy kind of attends because he's also like family to all of them. Alistair and Kesh kind of make their debut as like a couple, and everyone kind of supports it. Everyone's so happy for them because everyone was kind of waiting for it, and it finally happened. So everyone's just like me, because listen, they're the only ones I need to be happy, and they are. So that also happened. And then it's in the midst of everything else, Cyril also comes and he starts to clear the air with Graham, because remember at the beginning of the book how Cyril was the whole reason Graham kind of lost his job and whatnot, because Cyril kind of leaked the photos and whatnot. Okay, so all of that happens, but now they're starting to fix things for Lydia because she wants to start being friends again. We also get to see a Ren and Ember scene wherein Ren kind of apologizes because he wasn't clear in his intentions, and he lets her know that I don't want you as a friend, we want more and stuff. And so that also happens. They kind of reconcile. They end up hugging, the two of them, and guess who walks in on them? Ruby. And the best part is, this is where the book starts going, I guess, downhill in terms of secrets, because everything starts to come out, because I feel like final reunions are done, because now Ruby's just like so over it, considering the fact that Rin had spiked her drink a couple years ago and whatnot and tried to take advantage of her drunken state, and she doesn't want her younger sister to be with like a guy like that. And so she's freaking out as an older sister, as she should. She lets her sister know about her history with Ren. In the midst of everything else, as it turns out, Mortimer, the dad, shows up at the baby shower. Talk about showing face when you're not even invited, but he comes there to come ruin everything. He doesn't even come to congratulate his daughter about the kids and whatnot. He comes there so he can get a chance to speak to James about the fact that James wants out. And so he lets James know that he won't be approving the sale of James's shares in Beaufort, because he says that it needs like board member sanctions and stuff, and because he's dismissed half the board, majority of the power now falls in his hands, and he's like yes men, and no one's gonna approve it, so James is like stuck staying there. And to top it all off, he ends up also threatening Ruby's family to kind of force James to comply by telling him that he could send Ruby's mom off or whatever off the job, because she doesn't steal, she just takes the leftover goods at the bakery that's been left behind every night because they were going to be wasted anyway, and she takes them back home. And so it's not stealing technically, but he's going to put stealing allegations. Then the father, he works at this restaurant and stuff, and he said that he could get the restaurant like to kick the father out because of unsanitary conditions that cause people to get food poisoning and stuff. And then Ruby could lose her scholarship because he can ask all his like friends in higher places to do that. And suddenly, because James has been spending all of his time kind of living in the Bell house now and kind of connecting with all the family members and feeling like family there himself, he starts to realize that he cannot risk any of this happening because he's too close to all of them, and it's gonna hurt, number one, and number two, they're all good people, they don't deserve that coming for them if he wants out from his family shit. So he's like, okay, he'll come back in, and so he's ready to sacrifice his life to the devil once again just to save Ruby and her families. But yeah, you get the scene now wherein James is walking out of Ruby's house and going back to his own, so that his father does not like make true on his threats or whatever and make them not empty promises and stuff. And then in the midst of everything, you get a scene wherein James and Ren are trying to figure everything out, friend dynamics, and getting closer than ever. He's being invited to stay at Ren's place until he's figuring things out with his father, so that his father does not ruin Ruby's life. And you get a scene with Ruby and Ember wherein they're talking through their feelings, considering that Ruby saw Ember with Ren, and then that whole mess and whatnot, the shit show. And then also kind of discussing the fact that James has left and now we don't really know what's going to go down with the Beauforts and stuff, and Ruby's kind of heartbroken, but she still trusts in James and she believes he's going to be there, whatnot. But yeah, after this you end up getting a scene where James is forced to take part at this board meeting he doesn't want to be. He's forced to be back in the shoes of this life he didn't want to walk out in, and so there's that. On the way back home from that meeting, Percy is driving him, and then Percy just randomly stops the car and takes a different direction and has this whole conversation with James. And this is where the dramatics takes a whole turn, because now the showdown is about to happen. As it turns out, Percy lets James know that there's this thing that could potentially cost him his entire job, but he's gonna do it anyway, because back in the day, he and Cordelia were like close friends and stuff. Cordelia's the mom. I keep forgetting her name, but it's back now, the memory is back. And so back in the day when Cordelia was younger, Percy used to drive her around, they were close or whatever, and so he's doing it only for Cordelia's memory and the fact that he's close to James and Lydia, the kids or whatnot, and he wants them to be happy in their life, considering she's gone now. And so he lets James know that one day the, I guess, speaker, the internal, I don't know, voice system on their limo was on or something. I don't really know how these cars work, but essentially there's this button you're supposed to press so that the driver does not hear your side of the conversation when you're sitting in the back, except the father did not press that because he didn't realize, and he was on a call, and Percy was able to overhear the whole thing. And this was the day after the mom died. The father phoned one of the lawyers up and said, Cordelia's dead, I need your help. And so right after the mom died, before doing anything else, the father rushed to the lawyer's offices. And that's kind of fishy, and Percy kind of lets James know about this. Now James is automatically suspicious, as he should be, and as they continue the conversation, Percy was at the baby shower where Ophelia was as well, and he lets James know that he and Ophelia actually discussed this whole thing before he went to James. And Ophelia actually said that in the past few years, there's been like fishy stuff happening behind closed doors in like internal management at Beaufort, all seemingly sanctioned by the father. And now this news comes to light and suddenly they don't know what to trust. And to end this conversation off, Percy actually hands James this like key he was wearing around a chain on his neck, letting him know that when his mom was younger, she entrusted that key to Percy to guard with his life, and now he's giving it to James. He doesn't know what it's for. He's just giving it hoping that James can now fix the situation and kind of find out what's actually happening and kind of figure things out from there, because that's the extent of the help Percy can offer, but it's enough because it points James in the right direction, and suddenly now the plan starts to kick off into action. Now James kind of ends up inviting Ruby to his house. They go upstairs, and this is one of the days where the dad is not at home. So what they end up doing to start things off is actually go and search the mom's stuff, because while she is dead, most of her office and like workspace hasn't been cleared out, and they're trying to find something out of place or whatever, just like some sort of lock that they can try the key on and see if they can find something. But they don't, and so they keep searching and they keep searching, and finally they find this like old jewelry box kind of thing at the back of like her closet and stuff. They're wondering what it's about. They flip it over. There's a lock hole. So they end up putting the key in it. It turns, and guess what they find in the box? This is the moment everyone's been waiting for since the very first season or whatever, because what they end up finding in there, drumroll please, is the mom's will. But how is that possible? Because the will was read out a couple weeks ago. So now they go back to Ophelia's. They're trying to actually figure out and discuss what's going down. Ophelia was at the will reading, the kids weren't. And so she says that the will was authenticated by the lawyers and seemed real enough. But then when you consider the conversation Mortimer had when Percy was overhearing on the day of the mom's death, that actually means that Mortimer went back and forged the entire will that was read out, naming him as the sole successor of all of Cordelia's assets, meaning that will was fake, this is the real one, and guess what? She leaves every single one of her assets behind to her sister, her son James, and her daughter Lydia. Boom. Mortimer's a liar. Anyway, so they actually figure out that Ophelia was removed from the company a few years ago and how things started going downhill or whatever from that point, because Cordelia was trying to protect her little sister, and at this point when she's dead, she actually left it all behind for all of them, but Mortimer faked it because he wanted to keep the company for himself. A greedy pig. So they end up actually going to kind of have a showdown with him, get him to confess or whatever. And while he doesn't initially admit to anything, once they reveal that, listen, the lawyer is ready to go against you, if the lawyer doesn't get reported or whatever by the cops and stuff, he decides that, okay, keep it out of the press, I have given up. The whole reason Mortimer did this was because he figured that he's dedicated his entire life's worth of work into Beaufort, and he's not ready to see it take the direction it would under Ophelia and whatnot, and so he kept it for himself. He wanted it to prosper under his like hard regime and not actually go back to its rightful owners, because it's from Ophelia and Cordelia's bloodline. Mortimer married into it, and so rightfully it's not his. He tried to claim his stake in it only because he wanted management to go his way and he wanted to be in control of everything, micromanage like a control freak. And now that everything's out and you figure out that he's a liar, it's over, they get it back, that's it. So now they've won. We actually end up getting like a bunch of happy endings for everyone. Lydia has her children, she has a girl and a boy. They kind of win the whole dispute, so Ophelia gets management of the company, and now when Lydia's twins get a little older or whatever, Lydia finally gets to go back to Beaufort and start running it alongside Ophelia. On the other hand, we get to watch James finally be the child he's supposed to be by getting to play lacrosse and do all these fun things at like school and whatnot, the way he's always meant to be, not having his childhood snatched away and adulthood thrown in his lap the way his father was forcing him to, and so he's getting to live his life on his own terms. Ruby's finally getting to go to Oxford. They're, hanging out at the lacrosse game. All of their friends are happy again. Ren and Ember have sorted things out. They're now able to hang out in front of Ruby because she's ready to give them a second chance, because as it turns out, people do change. And we finally get an epilogue between James and Ruby when they're discussing their future plans. He's ready to leave on a trip. She's ready to go to Oxford. And they know that throughout all thick and thin, they'll be there for each other, because 1 year ago, when Lydia asked James to keep an eye on Ruby, she wouldn't know that she's changing the course of their entire lives throughout by that one decision. And now, looking back, they're so happy that happened in the first place, because they're going to be together for all of it, for all the good times and the bad times, and they know they'll make it through regardless. And so they're making their plans for the future. Everyone's happy, and now we've reached the end of the story. So this feels like a full circle monumental moment that I finally finished summarizing the entire series for you, and hopefully you guys had a fun time, because it's a long ass video, and so hopefully I didn't bore you out, and hopefully I was able to cover all the points in great detail and you actually understood my explanation. But regardless, here we are. We've now reached the end of this vlog and this mini series about Maxton Hall, because I've been making so many videos on it and this is finally the last one, so I can give it a break now and get to now watching season 2 and then getting excited for season 3, because that's going to be such a fun one when it comes out. I'm so excited to see all of this come to my screen. Having reread it now, I think I might just give it my original rating, like 4.5 stars, because it was so fun. And honestly, the entire thing at the end, sorry, I just forgot how dramatic it was and how fun it was to kind of go back through again and watch these characters finally get the happy ending they deserved, and I'm so happy to have gone through on that journey with y'all. So if you guys had a fun time coming along with me in this video specifically, like, comment, share, subscribe. YouTube things, you know how to do them. And if you've got more books you need me to summarize for you so that you can like see the spoiler summary before you go ahead and kind of wait out for the next show or whatever, or anything to come out, let me know in the comments. I'm ready to do that because it's so fun going along with it. But regardless, if you haven't already read the book Save Us or the whole series, definitely go through with it because it's such a fun one, and I feel like it's definitely something that'll stay with you very long. And also it's kind of like a rule wherein you have to read the books first before you watch the movie, so I don't make the rules, you have to do it. But regardless of everything else, I'll see you guys now directly tomorrow for the next day of Bookmas, like we've been doing all of December, because that is our routine. And so until then, stay safe, take care. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope you guys had a fun time coming along for this long adventure. But it's finally the end of it all, so that's it. I'll see you guys very soon, and until then, bye.